All right, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock and I'd like to call together the October 10th, 2024 school committee meeting. If you would please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. This evening we have our consent agenda posted as well as the minutes from the September 26, 2024 meeting in the packet and typical of bills and payroll. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Motion made by Stacy.
I'll second.
Seconded by Janine. We have one member with us in a hybrid fashion this evening, so tonight's votes will be a roll call vote. Stacy?
Stacy Maris, yes.
Stacy's yes.
Yeah.
Janine?
Janine, yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
Perfect. Tech check worked. And Justin McCarthy, yes, as well. All right, we will move on to our first opportunity for interested citizens. So if there's anyone with us this evening in person or on Zoom that would like to speak for the school committee, now's your first chance. There'll be a second chance at the end of the meeting. So we'll just quick close that portion of the meeting. Closed. All right. We'll now move on to a recognition portion of the evening. Harish is here joining us. Thank you for being here. If you please give us a student representative report.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Quick report from each of the schools on what's happened over the last 2 weeks. I'll start with Shaker Lane. Shaker Lane had a very successful book fair evening on Tuesday. Their annual book fair was a success, and the students are looking forward to the long weekend. Russell Street made some adjustments to their lunch procedure, and thanks to those, they're able to give students an extra 4 minutes to eat lunch, which makes a bigger difference than you might imagine. And they began using a program called Reflex Math to practice math skills. And Russell Street students have already solved over 600,000 math problems together using that software, which is very successful. From the middle school, midterm grades close tomorrow and progress reports released next week. Kids Night Out for 6th graders is next Friday, 6 to 8, and the 7th and 8th graders dance will be on October 25th. From the high school, graduation preparations for 2025 have already began as students had a meeting about their caps and gowns. On October 17th, the Model UN Club is collaborating with Littleton Drama to host a lip sync battle in which clubs and teachers will come together and fundraise, as the winners will receive a prize and spirit points towards Spirit Week. On the topic of Spirit Week, next week is our homecoming festivities, our game on October 18th and the dance on October 19th. On October 21st, the Monday after, there'll be a film screening of Dawnland, where students in the Facing History and Ourselves class will learn about the Wabanaki tribe and their conflict with the state of Maine and how Maine systematically took away their children from their families. Although it is not exclusive to the class, anyone from the public who wishes to attend can. And the drama department's play has begun practicing, and the play is scheduled for November 22nd through 24th.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have a few other acknowledgements.
Please take it away.
Tonight, or this afternoon, we had our first unified basketball game playing against Groton Dunstable here at high school. I was fortunate enough to be able to take it in. It was really nice to see them on the court, and we had a great first game. Tonight, we have a home high school football game under the lights, regular scheduled time. And they're playing Groton Dunstable. Nice to see our fall sports season back to their regular playing times. I'm also happy to acknowledge and report that Park and Rec is sending out a survey to the community to ask for input in regard to whether or not there's interest in creating opportunities for adaptive sports programs in our community. I'm thrilled that they're doing that. That means they'll be able to provide programs to students that in previous years haven't been able to participate in some of the athletic programs. So we're getting closer with all our programs, making sure that every child in our community has access to programs year round. Thrilled that they're doing it. Terrific. That's it.
Great. Perfect. All right, I'll close our recognition portion of the meeting. We have 2 orders of new business before us, as well as a couple presentations. So we'll start with new business, item number one, which Kelly Hunt will provide an update on the 2024-2025 enrollment.
Thank you. In your package, you have 3 pages. First page is where we are as of October 1st. And this summer during our retreat, we had an opportunity to go through 2 pages that I've included in the package today. As I mentioned at that time, enrollment fluctuates. It's not in steady state, so to speak. So where we are now, we have a resident population of 1,554 students, school choice 100 students, total population 1,654. Last year we had 102 school choice students, so we're pretty close, within 3. Now, to give you an idea of a little more information, I don't want to spend too much time on this unless you have questions. We opened up 41 seats, and we know we're not going to have 41 applicants, but we originally had 20 when school started. We were down to 18. We did have some movement within our school choice students that were already in the district. So, we're in good shape, but if you, take a look at the first table that we have up this evening, I want you to look at the high school choice enrollment, and then go backwards to middle school, Russell Street, and Shaker Lane. You can see there's a decrease throughout time, something we need to keep our eyes on. May or may not start to decrease as the years go by. We'll see what kind of openings we have from year to year. We are having more students apply for school choice at high school, which is a good thing, because we have 2 times during their educational career where there's a draw to other schools from grade 6 to grade 7 to Parker Charter, and from grade 9 to Neshoba Tech. So by the time we hit high school, on an average, we're down maybe 14 students or so. So it's nice to know that we're getting more interest in our high school to keep that enrollment as stabilized as possible. Any questions?
Questions come to mind? Any questions, comments? I guess what comes to mind to me is you touched on it. The leader in the clubhouse for school choice is high school, right?
Pardon?
The leader in the clubhouse for school choice is of the 4 schools is the high school.
Yes.
Do you think that's a result of us offering less school choice seats at the elementary schools because we have classroom sizes that are, we're anticipating classroom sizes showing up every year, and we're sort of guarding against adding
Yes.
school choice seats so we don't have a really big class come through?
Yeah, definitely. We're, as our resident enrollment increases in certain grades, that gives us less opportunity to take school choice students in. You can see by the data that I have on this table that is in fact happening, and we'll see whether that trend continues or not. There's no solid indication at this point in time that this is a trend. And, we'll wait and see. We keep watching the kindergarten classes as they come in terms of their size. But again, as our community grows, there's no definitive answer in terms of how much and if our enrollment will grow. We just had a study from MAPAC sent to us focusing on Massachusetts growth in public schools, and most of the growth is flatline or decreasing. And our resident enrollment has decreased, and our school choice numbers have increased during the last 5 years. So we are balancing somewhat. I mean, last year we had an enrollment. What did I put? 1704. So we're at 1654 now. So you can see a bit of a difference.
It's been a long time since I've been deep in this.
Mhm.
And I was part of watching school choice and having enrollment as a parent and like from the outside looking in. And it always seemed to me that high school, junior high school into high school was when school choice happened. Like elementary schools across the communities where I knew families, everybody was really happy with their like neighborhood elementary school. So is it, I mean, is it really a trend that we don't have many choice seats in the early years? Or is it just like a thing that usually if there's gonna be school choice, if there's gonna be movement among schools, it's usually after sixth grade?
Well, that might have been the way it was years ago, but we're finding more and more that we have more families from other communities wanting to get into Littleton Public Schools. So
Okay,
we do have wait lists
interesting.
sometimes, so. Yeah, definite, trend that's been different than 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think, our younger parents are really looking closely at school district success and accolades given by neighbors and friends, et cetera, and they're pretty cautious about making decisions where they're going to send their children.
Interesting change. Thank you.
So if I were to compare the two slides that you have here, I was just more curious about transitional. So in the current school year, we have a total of 13 students in transitional, and last year we had 18 students in that class. I know it's a small number of students, but
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
In our kindergarten enrollment, we're usually running 225, 226, Michelle, or sorry, 125, 126. Yeah.
Can I just talk a little about transitional? I was just looking at the offerings. So I believe we had close to 20 offerings this past year. So while it's 18 the year before to 13 this year, we've offered 20 spots. So 7 families declined. It always really comes down to, does that parent want to enroll their child in the transitional program or move on to first grade?
And I guess to revisit a conversation we've had a number of times, with the emphasis that our district has on SEL and MTSS, one has to begin to question whether or not a transition program is something that we need within our district as we move forward. Transition, in terms of its original drawing card, was an opportunity to provide families to send a child to a program that focused more on social skill development. So it wasn't based on academics. But I think we're at a point now, and Michelle and I have had a number of conversations. We really need to evaluate that program this year. And then we need to figure out at what point in time, if we decide to make a change, will it be advantageous to not only a family, but to the district as well. What I mean by that, we need to continue on with our school choice numbers, and the best time to have students enter a school district for families is after an early grade, rather than transitioning in at a later grade. So we just have to try to swing it where we're not going to lose too many school choice students. And we've been only taking in 5 at this point in time in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see from the table that was on the screen, every year we're losing way more than 5 from our high school when they graduate. But luckily, we've been able to pick some students up in between those
Right.
grades and at the high school.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
I know there's a lot of talk in town about all the housing that's coming on board, and we'll see how that all shakes out. I think it's somewhat thought out as to how it'll impact the school. But it's interesting to see that it's sort of a negative trend with number of residents in the district. Maybe because seniors don't have anywhere to go, so they're squatting on a house that a family can't move into because the cost of housing is so expensive anyways.
Could be a number of factors. If you'd like me to send me that impact report to the school committee, I can certainly do that. If you want to take a look at it. That's something you would be interested in.
What was that?
The MAPAC enrollment report
Oh, yeah,
across
Sure.
Massachusetts.
sure.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Should be great. All right, thank you for the update. Second piece of new business this evening is Massachusetts ballot question number 2. School committee will discuss the impact of MA ballot question number 2. So this is a statewide vote that's coming up. I think it's obviously ties in nicely with It's gonna impact the schools, so it's a yes or no vote. And just wanted to give us an opportunity to talk about it as a group. If you have an opinion, you're welcome to share. If you don't have an opinion, that's fine too. Perhaps there are residents in town that aren't up to speed on some of this stuff and might look to us to be, might offer, they might see our opinion as one of value, and if we wanted to offer that, it's totally fine. I don't plan on us having a vote or a motion in support of it one way or another, just kind of open dialogue. If the superintendent or anyone else was in attendance that wanted to offer an opinion as well. But for the purposes of a meeting, I'll just kind of give a background summary and then see what, and Arash, you're welcome to contribute as well. So before us this evening is question number 2, the elimination of the MCAS as a school graduation requirement. Everyone gets these at home, right? They're maybe readily available just about everywhere. But this proposed law would eliminate the requirement that a student pass the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System test in mathematics, science, and technology and English in order to receive a high school diploma. Instead, in order for a student to achieve a high school diploma, the proposed law would require the student to complete coursework certified by the student's district as demonstrating mastery of the competencies contained in the state academic standards in math, science, and technology and English, as well as any additional areas determined by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. A yes vote on this would eliminate the requirement that the student pass the MCAS in order to graduate, and a no vote makes no change. And if you take a minute to read through this, both sides make their points. There is a sort of a majority report included in this as well, where there's a conclusion. So the majority of the Special Joint Committee ultimately feels that for the reasons outlined in their conclusion, they recommend that it not be enacted at the present time. But if you read the argument for those in favor, those points are made as well. I'm happy to start and you guys can fill in the blanks, or if anyone else wants to start, that's fine too. Elaine?
I'm here. Yeah, do you want to go ahead and start? And I can.
I thought it was important for us to discuss it. Honestly, I don't have a super strong opinion either way. I do think that we're fortunate that we live in Massachusetts. Quality of public education in Massachusetts is strong, as we often reference in our meetings, because we're fortunate to receive some really nice praise. Our schools do well in a competitive Massachusetts environment already. So I think we already have a leg up in terms of, by the fortune of where we live, we have access to great education. Do I think that having one standardized test that everybody has to fit into to receive a graduation requirements, the best idea? Not necessarily, with all the emphasis on, I'm gonna get my acronyms mixed up now, but all the emphasis we've had on UDL and how students can receive information by various forms. I also think it's important for us to take a step back and allow students to demonstrate that they've received mastery of that curriculum in various ways, and perhaps not just a standardized test. The report goes on to say that roughly only 1% of students have ultimately don't receive a diploma due to passing the MCAS exam. And while that's great, fine and dandy for the 99% that ultimately pass the exam, it does leave that 1% without a high school diploma. And these perhaps are folks that are looking for employment beyond high school, and they perhaps might be seeking jobs, hopefully with benefits that are full-time, that perhaps have a sort of a entry-level requirement, prerequisite of a high school diploma. And it prevents them from landing that full-time employment position, receiving benefits, able to advance in the workforce. It can be a stumbling block for that 1%. So I don't have any concern in Littleton that if we remove the MCAS, all of a sudden our academic standards are gonna come down and we're gonna push kids through and people are gonna graduate and we're gonna lessen the academic rigor for those. I do perhaps question whether or not that might take place in some other areas of the state. And I think, unfortunately, a standardized test is probably the only way to do it. But if I had to cast my opinion, I would say that an elimination of it is, I would be fine with eliminating the MCAS as it relates to Littleton and as it relates to sort of the general population of Massachusetts. I think obviously there ought to be some eyes on those. My understanding is that the MCAS continues, it's just not a graduation requirement.
That's correct.
So my thinking here is that there ought to be some eyes on those test scores and the graduation requirements that those are fulfilling, where they receive a diploma, but they haven't passed. I mean, there should be not scrutiny, but someone should be examining that for a number of years to make sure that the academic standards haven't slipped to allow those kids to go off without mastering those basic skill sets that a high school education in Massachusetts would require. So my personal 2 cents on it. Feel free to agree, disagree, offer your 2 cents. Elaine?
Yeah, hi, yeah, thanks, Justin. That was a really great summary of pros and cons, and you covered a lot of ground there, much of which I agree with. I just wanted to share a few resources for folks that are still trying to make their minds up about how to vote on this. If you Google the Center for State Policy Analysis, this comes from Tufts University. They did a pretty short policy analysis on question 2, eliminating the MCAS graduation requirement. And it's very readable. They make the arguments for both sides. I found it really helpful to read when I was, trying to work my way through all of the pros and cons of this issue. I also thought it was interesting that the Mass Association for School Superintendents is recommending a no vote on this question, but the Massachusetts Association of School Committees is recommending a yes vote. My personal thoughts on it are, I think the graduation requirement using a standardized test like the MCAS is, I think the purpose behind it is becoming obsolete because the skills that we look for now in a 21st century education are more, with collaboration and critical thinking skills and inquiry-based learning. And those are all things that are not assessed on a standardized test. So having it be a graduation requirement gives that one test a lot of power that may not be appropriate. And I think the fact that students will still be taking the MCAS, will still get district data, our district and all the districts across the state. So if there is concern that a district's high expectations are starting to slip because they're not, they don't have that graduation requirement, those scores will certainly tell the story. I think DESE already has a lot of levers that they exert on school districts to maintain high quality. We've got standards that we have to meet. There's audits, there's all kinds of other ways to make sure that education in Massachusetts remains at a really high level. So the other piece of it is I hate to see the amount of time that teachers need to spend preparing their students for this test because it is so high stakes. And that is time that students could be spending learning skills that would take them into the future in a more authentic way. And the last point I wanted to make, I'm the parent of a high needs student. He's an adult now, but the graduation requirement did exist when he was in 10th grade, and he struggled multiple times to pass those 3 tests. And it was a source of high anxiety in our household because, to Justin's point, if you don't have a high school diploma, it really limits your job prospects for the future. And it felt at the time like a very arbitrary measure of what he would be able to do in his postgraduate life. So, I know in the statistics that there's only like 700 students across the state every year that don't pass, but if that's 1%, it sounds like a small matter, but that's 700 students, like that's 700 human beings whose lives are impacted because for whatever reason, they can't pass a standardized test. So I personally am going to be voting yes. And I thank Justin for bringing up this opportunity to have a discussion about it at school committee, just in case, any of folks are listening and are curious about what we all think about it.
Great, thanks, Elaine. Anyone else care to weigh in?
Sure, I'll
Yeah.
talk about it a
Great.
little bit, since I took it last year, no, 2 years ago. Yeah, I agree with the points that have been made so far that you're going into the future, you're gonna need more skills than just math and reading, and maybe a standardized test isn't the best way to do that. And that's the reason a lot of colleges have gotten rid of their standardized testing requirements is how you do on one given day isn't necessarily reflective of you as a person, and limiting those 700 students' job prospects after for that is not great. I mean, even in our school, a lot of teachers' policies are that they will drop your lowest grade from your quarter grades because they think they acknowledge that sometimes it just doesn't work out well. But yeah, I agree, like going in the future, skills like technology, collaboration, they're gonna be more important than just test performance. So I would support this motion, and especially if MCAS continues and we can still collect data, see what districts need more funding than others. I don't see a reason to not eliminate it as a requirement.
Thank you for wrapping up.
I'll go. I just very briefly want to agree with what Justin and Elaine said. I don't find MCAS as relevant as I remember when it was rolled out, and I think we had different expectations. I know when I remember it being rolled out, I thought it was going to be kind of more interactive, more alive, and its execution, I think, is disappointed to some extent, and I would very much welcome it not being one of the holdup for someone being graduating. I think that we have excellent tools to evaluate students without the MCAS. And I would like to see us lean into those tools better. So I agree with the yes vote to get rid of the MCAS as a graduation requirement.
I mean, I agree with what everyone has said, so I think the only thing that I want to add or ask to maybe contribute to the conversation was just from the educators, like what are the other measurements that districts in Massachusetts are using? Like if this is our metric of being able to compare schools apples to apples, what's the fallback if we pull MCAS away? Is there still some
Well,
type of?
There isn't another standardized metric. I mean, our curriculum standards really drive what we teach in all schools in Massachusetts. Exams, assessments more correctly, if they're traditional assessments, are usually designed by the company that's providing the resource, or teacher generated as well. What we do in Littleton is we develop common assessments, so that say a student in grade 5 with 6 different math teachers, they would administer a common assessment to all 6 classes. So we do what we feel is necessary to develop strong assessments within the district, and it's kind of school district dependent. So yeah, I mean, MCAS is the only standardized component at this point in time. Part of it is driven by federal requirements as well as having a standardized data.
Yeah, so this just removes the one piece that it gets tied to a graduation requirement, which so far we're all in favor of that, offering our independent opinions. But I think we'd probably also be of the opinion that we should do as well on the exam as we possibly could, because the information's gonna be posted. It's gonna end up being tied to Boston Magazine or whatever, school ratings and all that good stuff, so it's still high stakes. It just doesn't eliminate those 700 students who perhaps could have mastered the curriculum through various means and have demonstrated their mastery other than a standardized test. So,
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
add on to some of those same points, Justin, that, Stacy, when you're talking about comparing apples to apples, there, DESE doesn't promote that kind of competitiveness between districts, but we all know it happens, and there's several publications that make it happen. And I was considering that when I was thinking how I was going to vote on question 2. And I really feel like districts are still going to compete against each other. They're still going to want those high MCAS scores. But that's sort of a district to district, at like a district level measure, whereas the graduation requirement itself impacts individuals. So, to me, I don't think we're going to be losing any of the high quality of the high quality education that I do think MCAS has promoted, because it did, when it first came around, it did increase accountability. And I saw that impact in the classroom, that all of a sudden curriculums were being aligned to the standards in a way that they never were before, because now we were being held accountable. But that's at a district level. And I think that will be the case as long as there is an MCAS. So, but I think the graduation requirement hurts individual students, and that's my concern when I decided to vote yes.
well said.
Thank you.
You're welcome to say, you don't have to say anything, or.
No, I don't think I have anything specific to add. I think a lot of what you all have said, standardized tests are very tricky, because it is sort of this one size fits all approach in terms of test taking. And yet when you do things at scale, it's very hard to individualize. So and so it is a double-edged sword there, but I think the data is certainly compelling in the number of students who don't pass MCAS but could be eligible to graduate, where if that gap was a lot larger, especially in our state, I think that would be very concerning. And I think a lot of the data or the argument to vote no or to keep MCAS certainly, pits Massachusetts against some other states, perhaps where that gap is larger, but the data there is really important, I think. But it does sort of, I think, put some accountability on the state at a much larger level to not let that start to slip, which can easily happen, like to maintain this sort of high level through other means if it's not MCAS. So I certainly am leaning one way, but I haven't decided, because I still want to continue to do research and have conversations with educators. But I think all of the points you all have made are very valid.
This has been a great conversation, very, very thoughtful conversation in terms of what's best for students. And that is our focus. For me, if you don't mind, I'll take a not a firm position, but during my career, I've seen various degrees of accountability. Beginning when I was a high school teacher, we had accountability exams called departmental exams. In your senior year in core subjects, 100% of your mark was determined by provincial exam. Then they decided to get rid of it for a few years, 4 years. And in the 4-year period, somehow it came back again, and they reduced the percentage to 50%. But that was a long time ago. And education has evolved significantly during that time. And Justin, you talked about UDL, and UDL also promotes multiple means of representation, which means multiple means of demonstrating learning. So in the spirit of that, I think most districts that have adopted that kind of philosophy, teaching and learning, certainly wouldn't, in my opinion, benefit to have an MCAS exam that was a graduation requirement. But I still like the idea personally that there is some type of standardized assessment in districts throughout the state. I think there's some advantage to that. And I'm supportive of the fact that they're not integrated into a student's mark because they can be used on a non-student level in terms of looking at the school. We analyze down to the student level to take a look at our practice and review and revise and alter. But I think not having that hurdle to cross for even 700 students in the state would be advantageous.
All right, I think we covered it. Thank you everybody for the conversation. Hopefully that was of value to those that might listen in. We will move on to our presentation portion of the evening. So first up, we're going to hear school improvement plan updates for schools, for principals. You guys usually have a pre-planned order for me.
I don't mind, I just always go back, oh, good one first.
Well, John loves going, but he was pretty quick to get ready to jump up.
You wanna go? Go backwards?
We'll go backwards.
There you go.
I'm trying to make the football game. or
Nice
something?
change.
Yeah.
Actually, yes.
All right.
So before we-
We'll exit for the football game.
Before we get started, we're doing something a little different this year. We talked about the fact that throughout the years, we have had multiple sets of goals. We have so many goals. And we felt it was time to start taking a look at bigger goals so that we could make sure we spent adequate time on those goals that are most important to staff and administrators in the school. So we've asked the principals tonight to talk about their two big goals that they're working on this year. They are also working on the other goals that are included in their SIP, and we've included the SIP in the package. But we just want to really take a look at what are these goals doing in terms of resulting in positive change, and not only positive change, are they powerful enough to be inculcated into the culture of the school? And the answer is yes, in most cases, but there are certain goals that require more time. And I think that's something that has been lost a bit in the last 5-6 years. So we wanted to take a look at this a bit differently and start focusing in on what are the two huge goals or big goals that you really want to make sure you make movement on within your schools.
Great. Thank you. So our first big goal that I'll mention tonight is directly related to the assessment section of our strategic plan as well as our school improvement plan. And it comes out of, it is a result of our April collaborative conference visit with NEASC. They identified a number of priority areas, and one of the things that they asked us to do is put these priority areas in our school improvement plan. So this particular one will be in our new updated school improvement plan this fall. So, but this is an outgrowth of that visit last spring. So the first one is, the charge that Littleton High School will develop methods of assessing what proficiency looks like for each aspect of the vision of the graduate, which we're now taking to be calling the portrait of a learner, and will develop and implement a formal process to assess and communicate each learner's progress. That's a big goal. It's going to take time. It's going to take lots of collaboration among the staff to sort of figure out the assessments, the different types of projects, and the design of this, and the ratings for it. So we dedicated last May, the next month after that April visit, we dedicated our May school-based professional development day to initiate this work. And then we continued that in our recent September professional development day. So this work is underway, but it will take time. We reviewed the 6 competency areas, made some notes here to sort of elaborate upon this big goals, and so I'll reference them here. We reviewed 6 competency areas for the LHS vision of the graduate and current identified skills and maturity, and you've heard previous presentations about that. And those key areas, broadly speaking, are effective communicator, critical thinker, skillful collaborator, mindful learner, healthy and well-balanced learner, and engaged citizen. So assessments will need some form of assessment and determination around what is a proficient critical thinker at Littleton High School needs to be developed and implemented. So we've begun to consider methods of assessing what proficiency looks like in each of these skill areas. You'll be getting future presentations, I'm sure, updates about this, how this work is going as we get more specific. here are some of the questions we're discussing as we undertake this work. Where should we assess each specific skill? How should we assess each skill? Are we using language like they use in MCAS, not meeting expectations, or something like developing, partially meeting expectations, or approaching this more standards-based language, meeting expectations, proficient, meeting, exceeding expectations, advanced. So there's a lot of kinds of different ways to rate these levels of proficiency. So that how should we assess is underway. Should we use ratings and grades, or some combination of personal reflections and self-assessments for documenting student progress and skill levels? And you're likely to see that for sure with different types of presentations and projects and exhibitions. I think some of you are familiar with the work of Ed Sizer School chart, Parker Chart is a little bit like this, where they do exhibitions and demonstrations, portfolios. So I think you'll see some more of that at within high school in near term or in short future. What experiences can we design that allow students to practice and get feedback on the skills expected for LHS graduates? So what experiences are we going to design? And the other thing that came up, and we had a collaborative workshop with another district principal from Nipmuc, the two associate principals made a presentation at an admin retreat, and they've done a lot of work on the portrait of a learner. I think we mentioned that quite a bit at the previous school committee meeting. And one of the things that they've put into their assessments, and they're years ahead of other districts, and so we're learning a lot from them. And we have really good close collaboration. In fact, we're playing them tonight in football. That's a non-league game.
Yeah. Interesting time.
Yeah, so what potential I can statements might students complete and communicate to show their skill level? The I can statements, and there you can go to their website and see what kind of statements they use when they look at assessing proficiency. We're looking at that as well, whether we embed that in our assessments in some form or another. So future work in this area, this big goal is creating assessments to measure progress in meeting the skills. And students will, in the future, document and demonstrate their skills expected for an LHS graduate. This work is probably going, we have a lot of work that we want to accomplish this particular school year. And then we'll, in earnest, we certainly want to accomplish it by the following school year, because we have an accreditation visit in May of 2026. It's a decennial visit with it. They'll come in and evaluate and see how we did on our, and give us a progress report for sure about where we have to report out to them our progress on this initiative and our really our accomplishment of the goal. So we are committed to this work and seeing it through by having it done certainly by May of 2026 and hopefully months ahead of that visit. So the next goal is another very big goal, and this is something I did say for purposes of the school improvement plan by June 2020, it should say by June 2025, develop and implement a well-designed, clearly communicated and documented multi-tiered system of support, commonly referred to as MTSS. Multi-tiered systems of support programs aim to provide comprehensive academic, behavioral, and social emotional support. We already have a lot of the elements of this in place, as a high-performing high school, but we feel that we can optimize and be more effective in a variety of ways. So we really want to make this, our goal is to really clearly have a well-designed, and I go back to this, clearly communicated, documented, multi-tiered system of support. That's the goal. We want our staff to be able to articulate, know what this is, understand it, be able to say in a couple of bullet points, this is what does MTSS look like at high school? We want to have everybody be conversant and knowledgeable about it, be able to explain it. So just to give you a sense of a little background in the public as well, there are tiered levels of support. And I know you've had, I think, presentations from central office administrators previously about MTSS models. It typically consists of 3 tiers of support. Tier 1 is universal support for all students with high quality core instruction and school-wide practices. So that's how we do things each and every day with all our students. And then we provide targeted Tier 2, targeted interventions for students who require additional specific support, guidance, and time. I know Jason's going to be talking a little bit about this, perhaps. I just looked at your school improvement plan. And there's going to be a lot of good, close connections with LMS. As I was going through his school improvement plan update for tonight and the school improvement, the actual school improvement plan, I was saying, wow, we could do this is going to be perfect because we're so aligned. We can do this work together, 6 to 12. We're looking to do a lot of the same things. but really identify how do we support struggling learners in one way or another, that we need a little more smaller group, more individualized instruction. And that's an area we think we can become more effective at. So we have an academic support center, and we appreciate the school committee and superintendent's funding for an academic support center teacher. This past year, we added that as a position at the high school. So that's a good step in the right direction. Tier 3 is more intensive interventions for students with significant needs, often provided on an individual basis, and may involve specialized services. Little districts come a long way with that type of, actually providing those services directly in the high school. Our PACE program, our 9 to 12, significantly students with significant special needs. We also have the transition program 18 to 22 that was at a couple of years, more than a couple of years back. And we have the bridge program that is, along with our academic support center, launched the last 2 years ago. So we're doing a lot there for sure. Here are some things LHS will do throughout the year. For the tier 1, we're certainly going to emphasize our district curriculum accommodation plan, which is available for the public on the district website. They want to see that, and reinforcing effectiveness and follow-up of our student support team. That's the key thing we really want to get going this year. Our faculty have talked a lot about this, is really getting that student support team meeting regularly, identifying students, tracking their progress, tracking the success of the interventions. So we're going to be creating and implementing specific student support, student success plans. Lots of other schools do this. We're talking with the principal here, Shirley. They've been putting these plans in place. It's not a new thing, but we're going to get more explicit about doing it for kids who are really struggling and more closely tracking their progress, monitoring their progress really closely. So with that in mind, we'll be tracking school-wide data related to student performance and conducting regular reviews at a regularly scheduled, reviewing data at regularly scheduled intervals. Ensuring frequent communication, of course, with student progress, with parents and students who are part of this. Looking at student schedules and making adjustments for those who need additional support during the school day, something we'll be doing more of this year. We do this anyway, but what we're looking to do is be much more deliberate about it, intentional, and checking in on how we're doing, monitoring our progress, our success. Providing more common planning time was identified also in that collaborative conference report last April. So we're going to be doing that with our flex block, providing time for teachers during the school day and the flex block so they can discuss instructional practices and review student data together. In fact, the ELA department will be reviewing they'll be taking a mod. All teachers have been scheduled to have me covered for a whole class period, and it's combined with our flex block. So they'll have 90 minutes in the morning dedicated to reviewing MCAS scores altogether. And that's a new thing, not just left to after school. Where sometimes it's hard to get everybody to attend, or stay the whole length of time. We are embedding that in the school day, and we're going to see more of that. The math department has already met in a similar fashion to look at the MCAS data, the past results that we'll be presenting on in November. We're going to be reviewing, documenting, and continually implementing standards-based, high-quality curriculum instructional materials. That work is already very much underway with the curriculum mapping review. So that's going to continue. We're going to continue to strengthen UDL practices that address academic behavior and social emotional well-being. We already have launched our Character Strong curriculum in our advisory, so we're making a lot of gains there. We're developing and implementing any necessary and additional tiered supports and resources, and we'll continue, of course, our professional development focused on assessment and practices. So I wanted to give you, I made some notes because I wanted to tell you what's involved with accomplishing that big goal. And as you're taking that in, I know that's a lot to absorb, but there's a lot of things that will be happening simultaneously throughout the building over the next year and a half with the MTSS school. And it should make us a much stronger school, much more focused on data and monitoring student progress more closely.
Great. Questions, comments? I know the end of the year gets super busy with our agendas, but I think it's gonna be like a common theme because big goals. If we'd love to invite you back towards the end of like May, late April, just to get an update on the progress that you're making.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really important, so.
I think Elaine.
Elaine?
Yeah, me again. John, I just want to thank you for the thoughtfulness you put into this and the way your two goals really align. I'm really excited about the vision of the graduate and all of the steps that you're planning to take with that initiative, and then how beautifully the work on MTSS aligns with that, because that's really all about individual student success. And super excited to hear about your student success plans and utilizing the DCAP to, which I hate to throw all these acronyms around. That's the District Curriculum Accommodations Plan. This is typically, this is for other folks, not you, John, but just it's a list of different kinds of accommodations that can be provided to students who are struggling within the regular ed classroom. But to be able to really track students who are struggling but not enough to be on an IEP, and looking at that DCAP for strategies that can be used to support them, really shows your emphasis on individual student success, which then leads beautifully into your vision of a graduate. So it's I think it's really exciting what you've got laid out this year. I do have a question. This might be more for at the district level, but it seems like I know at least at the high school and the middle school, there's an emphasis on MTSS, and I was wondering if there's coordination at the district level for MTSS, or is this something that individual schools are taking on their own?
Yes,
No, thanks, Elaine, good question. This is a district-wide initiative. So we're all focusing on tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 MTSS in all of our schools.
Okay, is there somebody responsible for that, or is it a shared responsibility?
Well, school principals and director of teaching and learning, and I'm also involved in it as well. So is Lynn. As I've mentioned before, we're trying to have a better marriage between special education and regular education. There's a lot of information that can be shared, and we're moving more towards inclusivity within our district for students in special education. What that means is having the services going to the classroom when possible, rather than having students pulled from classrooms. So it all ties in, and it has to be kind of a shared responsibility, Elaine, in order for it to be effective. When we're talking to staff, the district PDs, that message and approach has to be replicated at the school level with the principals as well as instructional leaders.
Yeah, I think it's important, maybe even to talk about at your leadership meetings, because there's so much overlap between a lot of these initiatives you talk about, like MTSS and UDL and Vision of a Graduate, and probably many more. And I think it's
We do. So
yeah, that's
our
great. Yeah, because
agendas are-
it's I think if you can find the through lines, it makes it more effective and less like one more initiative.
Yeah, sure. Beth?
I was just gonna say, if I may jump in, because MTSS is an overarching umbrella that
Sure.
all of these other pieces fall under, right? So SEL, UDL, the whole alphabet soup really falls under MTSS. And so it is shared responsibility amongst all of us, right? But it is something that we are very thoughtfully thinking of, how can we expand without it being overwhelming and trying to shift the entire system overnight, because then it would be more of a flop. And so all of these pieces that we're talking about all fall under an effective MTSS. And so it's kind of happening slowly but methodically in order to get to this point where we can say that we have an effective, impactful MTSS that touches upon all of these other pieces that we've been working on for many years. And so that's why it's hard to pinpoint one person, one thing, one event, one day where it's going to be all said and done, because it's a constant process overarching within this MTSS system.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Harrington.
Thank you.
It's a lie.
Thank you. I'll be succinct. Our first goal really revolves around the implementation of UDL as part of our instructional practice. But within that, there are components, and the component that we're focusing on this year is the cornerstone of relationship building between staff and students. I think anyone who practices UDL understands that you have to know your students in order to be able to know how to teach them. You need to know their interests, their background, their experiences. And our staff get to know students, but I think it's important for us to take that a step further. And part of my job is to provide opportunities or small nudges for these things to happen. And so that's really what we've been focusing on so far this year. So for example, I brought in Dr. Alex Hirschberg, a clinical psychologist, to talk to our staff on an early release day about being trauma informed, but not just being trauma informed, but being trauma responsive. What does that look like in a class when a student refuses to do the work? What does it look like? How do we respond when a student refuses to go to class? What does it look like when a student is dysregulated and now all of a sudden finds himself with 25 other sets of eyes on him? And how do we impact, and how do we support our teachers and empower our teachers to be able to handle those things? He then spent a full day with us and met with every single person in the school who works with students to have those same conversations individually in small groups. It was quite inspiring. So what we've done then is we use that as a springboard. And so I have challenged my staff to find the time and the effort to connect with kids, but not just to say, listen, I want you to connect with kids. So what we did is we broke teachers up into teams with the idea that each person or team is going to select a number of students that they are going to spend that extra time and effort with. The problem is if we just say that, it'll never happen, or it won't really come to full fruition. So I crafted it to be just like we would do an evaluation. They have to identify which students that they want to connect with. And the goal was not just to choose the same students that you see every day and all the time, but those others that might come through your classroom and never get that extra attention. It doesn't have to be kids who are just struggling to perform academically or socially. It can be the kids who we just say, you're going to be fine because you're going to get what you need later. Those kids often don't get what they need, that individualized attention. So it was a challenge to the staff to say, okay, you are going to do that. So you're going to identify the student. You're going to identify the goal. What do you hope to get out of this, right? You need to go into this with a goal, because if it's just to connect with kids, that doesn't mean anything. So what impact do you specifically want to have? How do you intend to do it, right? Like, give me an idea of what steps you're going to take to make that impactful. And then finally, once you've identified the goal, the purpose, right, then it's how do you know it worked? And so adding that evidentiary piece onto it to say, listen, how do you know that you had an impact in this? How do you know? And it can be something anecdotal, or it can be something if you chose more of an academic bent to be able to do that. But the idea is we want to hold ourselves accountable. And that day, I chose 3 students, 3 6th graders, and I started my process. We had a lunch group yesterday. It was awesome. One student asked for lobster for lunch. I was like, well, you might as well go big, kid. So no $6.99 lobster special at Market Basket that day. But the idea though is within this, we identified 60 students, 65 students that our staff are going to go out of our way to connect with and build a relationship with that we would not normally otherwise. That was one of the most inspiring days I've had as administrator in the 8 years that I've been in Littleton, because it was a coming together, watching teachers get back to why we got into teaching, what made us want to do this job for a living, and then providing an opportunity and an expectation for that to happen. So my hope is to see us reach about 30% of our population. Right now we're at about 17%, so we not quite want to double that by the end of the year, but my hope is that momentum, people saying, wow, this is actually fun, I'm really enjoying this, you know what, I'm going to take on somebody else. And it was really inspiring to see the sheet with who they chose and what they hope to get out of it, and those kids that were selected. So that's the part of UDL that we are working on right now in our building, is finding an opportunity to build those relationships with hope. If you can know your students, then your lesson plans reflect that, and then we see that academic increase. So that's where we are for goal 1. Goal 2 is around, as John said, our MTSS system. We've been in the process for a couple of years. It was the first thing that I wanted to tackle when I was hired as an assistant principal 8 years ago. And we started last year sort of reinventing how it is. And so this year what we have done is we've taken away the math lab, lit lab, ASC identity, a separate class that we remove kids from art, or music or computers to attend. And now what we've done is we have our interventionists pushing into classes where the need is, working with students on the content that they're working on in the moment, not a week later, right? Or a month later, depending on schedules, and getting that real-time help, that real skill building need, whether in math and in ELA, so that we are responsive in that moment. We also want to make sure that kids, when they have that need met, that we then sort of graduate them out and we open up to other kids. We want to increase the number of students that get this service, that get this intervention, not limit it to a handful. And so this year, right now, it's about building schedules and building that. How do we make that work? And so we started. It's a little clunky to start because you're trying to schedule 13 different kids, and how are you going to get to all those classes? But we're getting on board. We're having conversations with our interventionists about how do we make this work, what should be realistic expectation for them and for the kids. So that's the work we're doing this year to meet the goals of an overhaul to our MTSS system in the second goal, and implementation of UDL in our first goal. Thank you. I'm sorry, they have passionate about that. I worked up.
Elaine?
Yeah, yeah, can you say, I'm looking at your first goal about the engagement of staff with students. And you said your purpose with that is to get to know students better, to support with UDL, the appropriate UDL strategies for their learning. Is part of, are you providing your staff with some ideas about how to take the information that they're getting from forming these relationships and actually learn about students' learning styles, like how to best engage them in the work, or how the work needs to be presented to them, or different ways for students to show what they've learned? You know, I'm just wondering what the connective tissue is between getting to know the students and then somehow fine-tuning that to actually know more about their learning styles to support the UDL strategies.
Right, so once we get into this groove and we build this momentum to what we're doing, then we'll start talking about specific strategies, Elaine, about how do we make that happen. I don't want to hit them with everything all at once. Right now, we just want to focus on the most important aspect of building that relationship. And then once we've developed that comfort level, then it becomes something that my hope is that teachers are more open to and more engaged with, because they're finding the value in it, that intrinsic value that speaks to why they got into this originally. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, just not right now.
Yep. So this is baby steps.
Baby steps.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
Question? I just want to make sure I understand this, because I love the goal. I love the work that you guys are doing.
Mhm.
But what I've heard you say in the past was, I'm a middle school parent.
Mhm.
I've been in the gymnasium when you've given the talk. What I
Yep.
thought I heard you say was, every one of you is going to have your kid walk through that door and they're going to hear their name called that day.
Mhm.
Every one of your students is going to, over the course of this year, we have a goal of making sure that every single one of your students has a adult connection in the building, someone that knows them so that they don't come and go day by day, 180 days, and just kind of move on.
Yep.
So my assumption was lofty goal, but over time, that'd be like about 100% of the student body population.
Right.
And in here, you've got 30%. And I'm just wondering if it's because sort of maybe perhaps 70% of the student body population maybe takes care of itself. Like there's that natural, I gravitate towards this teacher because we have common interests, or I like that teaching style, or we have things in common, or,
Exactly.
and perhaps these are the 30 where it's like this 30% might slip through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and have not made that adult connection.
You're
So
100% correct.
is that what's going on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There are some kids, Justin, that I will connect with just because of the nature of it,
Sure.
right? That I don't have to necessarily identify, because I'm going to spend time with them and I'm going to be talking to their families. It's part of what I do. Teachers will do the same thing. So we take those kids and we just make this assumption that we're doing that. The challenge was to reach out to kids that I might not normally
Mhm.
otherwise, or kids that will only see me as the authoritarian because they're in my office for a specific reason. And so trying to get our staff to look at kids in that way. Who are the kids that you might have to really put in some effort to connect with? So we're starting with that 30% with the idea and the hope that A, we actually go above 30%. I just want to set 30 as a floor. But B, that there's a tremendous amount of kids who by nature, we will have developed those connections with. And that happens in things like clubs and activities.
Sure.
Just the day-to-day hallway conversations. So, yeah, you're right, there is a lofty goal. And my hope is at the end to be able for us to be able to sit down and say, okay, who have we connected with? Let's see just how close to 100% that we can get.
Can I ask a question, kind of a follow-up on that, because I had seen that too, and I think 30% is a great number, but I was like, what about the other 70%? So it's really good to explain kind of like how the school, you guys kind of take care of each other anyway, so you guys are kind of just
Absolutely.
trying to find those maybe 30% that maybe need that little extra help, but
Yeah,
have you thought about ever reaching out to the kids too and saying, hey, are there any students here that actually want to make a connection with anyone in particular that they feel like they haven't been able to, or just to kind of flip that as well to give students the same opportunity to connect maybe with an adult that they want to, or that they're interested in?
we haven't opened it up to that, but that's something we're thinking about. We always want to try and increase student voice in our
Yeah.
buildings, but also, you know, I think it's a great idea to once we get going with this, to be able to say to students like, who needs that connection? Who wants it? Who do you want to connect with? I think we can absolutely do something like that.
Yeah, it's just interesting
part of the
to allow them to
assessment,
be
yeah.
engaged with it.
Yeah,
Good idea.
I love it though.
no, I like it. We'll do that.
So
Yeah.
Jason, I'm not sure how deep of a dive you want to go. A number of years ago, I developed a professional development offering, personality typing for students and staff, and I aligned it with student learning styles. So if you want to go that deep, I can certainly help you do that. And what it does is it allows teachers and students to learn how they best learn, and it also develops classroom profiles. So sometimes you may have a class that's really struggling with learning and behavior. And quite often the teacher is using a methodology that may be a strong learning strategy for them, but it's not for that particular group of students. So I used it for probably 6-7 years in high school, and it really worked out well. So.
Well, when the time comes, I'm open
Here
to
if you
any
need me.
suggestions and resources and anything that will make this work, because as Justin said, I made that promise on back to school night. I maintain that. That is my goal, and I won't settle for anything less. So we're gonna push as close as we can. It's critical, the day and age that we live in, that we shoot for that 100%. 90 would be great, but it's that other 10% that it would be a shame if they walked out having not had that.
I appreciate that. It's such a formative time too, and I think what you said about the educators and why you went into teaching also really struck a nerve, because God bless you all for working with 11 to 13-year-olds all day.
They're fun.
I mean, I come from the world of preschool, also very difficult, but they're cute. So it's a challenging age, and I think that connection, like you said, is really important in their feeling belonging in a school at that
Yeah.
time.
Middle school educators, I think, were born into it. I think there's just something about us that the ones that are successful.
Yeah.
I'll speak for myself. I'm not sure. I know it, but that's also what makes me because I can talk like a 13-year-old, and I find that the 13-year-old humor funny. It becomes a plus that might not work in other areas of education. But the other part too is that idea of pushing it to the reasons why we get into this. This was also my way of painting people into a corner, and that sounds devious, but I also want to be able to say, I want to pose it in a way that, how are you going to say no to working with kids?
Mhm.
How are you going to say no to impacting life individually? And if I can get people to that point, then maybe we can turn from, this is one more thing, to, you know what, this is one thing that's really, really important, I want to do.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we're on it. And middle school kids, they really, one of the things that Dr. Hirschberg, and I'll step down, talked about is that generationally, the differences between kids when, pre-COVID in the 2000s and 1990s and today. And one of the things that he cited was that kids today, they crave adult relationships in ways that previous generations did not. I didn't want to have a conversation with my teachers. I didn't want to hang out in the principal's office. Now, I'm telling you what, you come into our school, kids just swarm the teachers. They want to have that adult connection like I've never seen before. So he's right. That change allows us to connect with kids. I mean, it's almost being handed to us on a silver platter. We just have to take advantage of that opportunity. And so that's what we tend to do. Yes.
I just wanted to check in with what resources this might have uncovered, any resource needs. And not to put you on the spot, just to open up the door that, because when you say trauma,
Right.
and I just think that in today's world, I'm sure that kids are hearing and seeing things. They aren't gonna maybe come in and act out, but there's a lot going on. And if there's anything, that comes up that can help the therapy dogs and other tools that are helpful in those situations.
Our teams are really good about recognizing that in students, and my hope is that relationship building, that some of these things, because some kids are very private about it,
Yeah.
and they don't want to share that.
Mhm.
We also are in constant contact with families, so there are things we can pick up little hints and things. So between our adjustment counselor, school psychologist, Care Solace, the outreach that we normally do, I feel confident that when these things do come up, some we have plenty on our radar, but there's always those ones that we had no idea what was happening at home.
Yeah.
And so I do feel comfortable with the structure that we have to address that in the moment.
Awesome.
And we also have outside resources that we can reach out to if we at any point in time feel overwhelmed.
But I'm glad that this is really on your radar. I mean,
Yeah,
how can we not be traumatized? You should open up the
exactly,
newspaper, right?
exactly. It's a different day.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Evening, everyone.
Good evening.
You will certainly find some similarities in Russell Street's first goal and Shaker Lane's first goal, because it has all to do with the implementation of our new literacy curriculum, Wit and Wisdom, which we're launching this year, K-5. So that first goal is all about a successful first year of implementation, knowing full well that a full implementation takes a few years to get under our belt to finally feel comfortable. But that first year is really critical to making sure that we're set up for success and doing all we can for our students with this new style of literacy instruction. I know that we're going to be back in November to talk a lot more about Wit and Wisdom, so we can get into all of the nitty gritty and details of what that program is all about and how it is a big shift pedagogically for our teachers and for our students. But in terms of the first goal, we are already well underway in that implementation, starting from a lot of summer work from the implementation team, teams of teachers that are representative across all grade levels, to start understanding what that program is, getting some training, and starting the planning so they can do some of the heavy lifting for that first module to get things up and running for the first module of the school year. We've already had a few professional development days and early release days where we have had the publisher Great Minds come in and give their standard launch implementation workshops. But now we're getting into the fun part of having our own faculty and staff members leading some professional development, doing a lot of that planning, and making sure that we are off and running with the new curriculum. So a lot more to come, but already well on our way. Second goal is all around something that I learned about as I was coming in and getting to know Russell Street School, which is Stripe. And in talking with teachers and kind of diving into it, Stripe is a program that is in its essence similar to Heart at Shaker Lane, and was birthed out of from a staff initiative a few years ago, when Russell Street needed some changes and some livelihood and needed some support in helping form a really solid school community. And then from, what I've gathered, COVID came along and a lot of the things that had really good momentum going into 2020 kind of fizzled just out of necessity. So that second goal is all really about revitalizing the Stripe initiative and emboldening it and empowering our teachers to really blow that out to make it part of our school community. I want when you would ask a student, what does it mean to be a Russell Street student? Through this goal, I would want students to, one of the first things out of their mouths, say, oh, it means Stripe. Like we are Stripe. We earn our stripes at Russell Street. And then they can tell you all about what that means, what it looks like, how it is infused in all aspects of their day, and how it helps them be more successful and productive and a member of the Russell Street community. So again, that goal is already underway. I put a call out for a Stripe PLC or a Stripe team. And I had a few educators volunteer, a couple grade level teachers, a UA teacher, and a Title I teacher volunteer to head up professional learning community to really be at the forefront of making sure that Stripe is embedded within the school community. I come from a background of schools that uses PBIS structures, positive behavioral interventions and supports, to really shape school communities and craft expectations that are consistent and predictable and understandable for our students so that they know kind of how their day should go and what is expected of them, and we can positively praise all the wonderful things that our students are doing. So that team is, we crafted some vision statements and we backwards mapped what we wanted Stripe to be, and now we're in the thick, as you can see, in the goal of chipping away at the things that make it more visible and get students more involved and incentivizing the great things that our students are doing. It goes beyond into the community of getting community members involved and then making sure that they're on board and showing their stripes at home as well. And you know, just making Stripe be what makes a part of what makes Russell Street such a great place to be. Happy to take questions. Great.
Elaine, give your hand up again.
It is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I'm in Vermont, but I promise I'll be there next time. I just wanted to, I'm so excited to hear more about wit and wisdom, so I'll hold off my questions because I'm glad we'll hear about that in November. But I just really want to commend you for picking that Stripe program as the area of your focus this year, because you know, what a great way to get to know a new school community and for them to get to know you and, you know, to work within an existing structure, but to, you know, put your own skills and expertise and energy and heart into. So I think this is just so smart and so beneficial to the school community. So thank you for taking that on.
Questions, comments, feedback? So if we don't.
Yeah, this sounds great. I think Russell Street's definitely needed to have some something injected into it. From what I understand, like it just needed a little bit more energy brought into it and a little bit more community feeling to it. And I'm really appreciative that you're gonna spend some time to really work on that and bring it to life. So thank you. Yeah.
And looking at the school improvement plan included in the packet, it was July 1st, 2023, before you showed up. As great as Cheryl Temple was, and we all love her, you know, her name's still on it.
Yep.
Let's get you on there. Let's get you to own it. Look through this. If you're like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, I can't wait to implement it.
Yeah.
Take the bull by the horns and run with it. If you want to make a couple, you know, comic-con tweaks to it, power is yours.
I appreciate that. Thank
Okay. Great.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Hello.
they're going to go at the end. So Colin talked a lot about the PD that we're working on, and I think one things I want to pick up on is the part that we're really now moving into supporting the staff. And he mentioned one of our last PDs was on actually different protocols with the program. And so the implementation team, which is comprised of teachers and reading specialists and administrators, we attended a 6-hour PD and then turned around and gave that PD to our staff. So we put a lot of time, Russell Street put a lot of time into that presentation for everyone. And walking away that day, I remember one of the kindergarten teachers said, I think this is the first time I heard people laugh and smile and feel comfortable, because the PD was palatable. It was something that they needed, and they felt like, all right, we can now plan and move forward. So I'm not sure what else I can add, because it is really just planning for this program this year. It is definitely a program that is hard for our staff. It's definitely a learning challenge for our students, and seeing the growth in K1 too. It's very interesting because K and 1 are getting along pretty easy, and I find second grade is struggling a little bit only because they don't have that base knowledge that the K and 1 kids are getting. So those second graders in 3 years, I think, are going to rock it. But you can see kindergarten's moving along, first grade's moving along, second grade is moving along. I was in Abby Warnock's classroom today, and I stood at the door and my jaw was dropped, and I looked at her and I said, oh my gosh, I saw when she posed a question, more than half of the class raised their hand. It was a very inquiry-based question. and they had the knowledge to answer it. And typically when you ask a question in a classroom, you see 3 or 4 hands go up. It was more than half of the class. And I couldn't leave because I had to see how this was going to play out. So that was really cool to see in 2nd grade. And I caught up with her at the end of the day and said, you know, Abby, that was incredible. I'm like, those kids knew the answer. She said they did. And we're almost to I say we're around lesson 17 or 18. So they're well embedded in this module so that knowledge has been building like 16, 17, 18 lessons in. So it's kind of neat to see. It's a process, but it's hoping to see good things in the next few years. So that's our first goal shared with Russell Street. And our second goal at Shaker Lane is really building off of last year. We did a lot of work with diversity, equity, inclusivity, and belonging, and we want to strengthen that even more this year. So one of the things that, we're continuing to hold our second annual cultural fair in a couple of weeks. We're partnering with Russell Street, which is even better. We have some presentations coming along. And something that we're going to start this year is actually inviting families to come in and present at community meetings. And I read a book today. Rebecca and I pick a book. I think I talked about this in the past. We started it last year or the year before. We read a book every month. We send a sign out to the teachers and we said, sign up for a time you want us to read to your class. And today's book was It's Okay to Be Different. And it was it's a picture book about belonging and kindness. And this is my 8th year at Shaker Lane. 7 years ago, if I would have read this book and say we all have different ways that we look, I had a little boy say, yep, I have dark skin and somebody else has light skin. I don't know if that would have been said 7 years ago. So I think of the culture that we're building at Shaker Lane and acceptance and children offering up these ideas without us just saying them is really cool. So we are, like I said, just trying to build that diversity, the equity, inviting families in. Teachers already invite families in to share things, but we want to do it more whole school at some of our community meetings this year. So once we are through building heart, because we're kind of halfway through with our community meetings with heart, we focused on the H and E last month. We'll focus on A and then RT next month. Around December or January, we'll start to invite families to come in and present at our community meetings. So we're looking forward to that.
Good stuff.
Question,
Thank you.
Elaine?
How did you know? Thank you, Michelle. That's really awesome. My question actually, I don't want to put you on the hot seat. This might be for Kelly, but with the big school improvement goals for this year, how does this integrate with your 3-year school improvement plans? Which it's funny when I looked at them, time marches by so quickly, I know they were written a while ago and there's, they were referencing the old Lucy Calkins writing program and now we've got Wit and Wisdom and, so I'm wondering if these new goals, do they replace goals in the school improvement plan or are these extra areas of focus?
No, Elaine, I can answer that. We've always viewed our planning as a green print rather than a blueprint. That way, when we are faced with changes like this, we can replace goals. And that's the power of a green print approach to strategic planning. So it will replace some of the other goals. And as I said at the beginning of the presentation today, we're really cognizant of the fact that if your SIPs have 12 goals every 3 years, and you're trying to integrate 12 goals into your school, within three rounds, 9 years, you have integrated 36 goals. That's a lot. And to integrate with integrity and with the expectation of having them become part of the culture of the school. And what we're doing here, and we've done this before, we're just formalizing it. There are certain goals that at this point in time take priority over the other goals. And one of the expectations of a leadership position is that you identify what, in the case of a principal, an assistant principal, you identify what your schools need in real time. And it's important to be able to think on your feet and change those goals or modify them if necessary so that you set the leadership team and also the staff up for success. So there's not a problem with doing that. For me, when I look at schools through a period of time, I'm fortunate to have had administrators in the district for a number of years, and we can sit down and take a look at things over an 8-year span. and see what's happened since you're one of their leadership. That's a really powerful exercise to do, because you find that a lot of these initiatives that were identified have been implemented and have continued to be part of the school culture. I mean, Colin's recognizing the fact that stripes had lost from some momentum is 100% accurate through COVID, and staff and Colin were astute enough to say, we need to reinvigorate this program. There's a lot of good to it, and we're gonna make it better than it was before. So that's the philosophy that we use in our district.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because like I said, when I was reading through the school improvement plans, there were so many things that looked outdated. And so I'm really glad there's a process to bring it up to the current day, you know, with existing curriculum and existing needs in the buildings. And so I'm just wondering if in the future, is it worth going through, you know, like you've got the school improvement plans in the packet. Is it useful to cross out ones that are now obsolete that you're replacing with the big SIP goals that we talked about tonight?
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
But I just want to add one thing before we go into there. Elaine, if you look at our curriculum and instruction, I believe one of the goals was evaluate a reading program, a literacy program.
Yep.
And to me, this is the extension of it. We evaluated it the year I think this is the last year of the school improvement. No, we have one more year of the school improvement plan.
Yeah, I think there's one more year.
There's one more year after this year.
Yeah.
So I feel like our implementation of Wit and Wisdom is an extension of that because we went through the evaluation, the process, the selection, and now it's an implementation. So I feel like that one ties right into it. And the DEIB goal, I can speak specifically for Shaker Lane. I know that ties into the community and engagement standards 3 and 4.
Okay, so this is like pick out of all of these goals that you've got in this 3-year plan, this is the one that these are the 2 that you're really highlighting this year for extra emphasis.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And Kelly does give us, sorry, Kelly, he does give us the leeway to move outside a little bit, but I still feel these for all of us, I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, are strongly grounded somewhere in there and tied to a goal. It just might be an extension or, you know, a pathway into something different.
Or an update because times have
Mhm.
changed. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate, Kelly, you just said to go deep on 2 goals, to do 2 things, maybe focus and do them really well, rather than try to do a lot of things mediocre, and such is life with so many priorities right now. So really appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you all sort of highlighted the goals that you have. Really love the DEIB focus. I remember on the council, when I was on the council, we talked about that. So really excited to see sort of the community involvement in the school. You know, if I was at Shaker Lane, I would be one of the volunteers for sure in January. And then for Wit and Wisdom, sorry, I forgot, but were we already on the cycle to replace the ELA curriculum, or is this sort of because of the state's push for the literacy curriculum? Or this was
No,
already-
no,
No,
we,
it was
Okay.
part of our curriculum review
Review
plan.
time.
So
Okay.
it just happened to align.
Okay.
Really nice. But yeah, and since you mentioned Wit and Wisdom, last week I was in the grade 2 classrooms for a Wit and Wisdom lesson, and I could block it wasn't long enough to see all 6 classes, but I was in 4 classes and watched the teacher engage students in a lesson, and I left highly impressed. I mean, it's a knowledge-based curriculum, and the vocabulary that the students were using, the critical thinking that the students were using was it was an incredible experience. It made my day. That's how powerful it was, and that's the grade 2s. You know, having students that haven't had this before in grade 2, as Michelle said, you know, when the kindergarten students hit grade 2, there's going to be a huge difference. So I'm really sold on the choice that we made for this curriculum, and I'm very confident that we're going to see some incredible results in the short term. So thank you, Michelle, for all your hard work. Other question?
Mine's just looking at the school improvement plan. If this is something that we update, could you just revisit the student learning time on because you guys have it all spelled out with the half days and stuff, and we made some significant changes to that, so if this is a document that we use other places, perhaps we should update the number of half days from 18 to 12 and have that reflected in our structured learning time as an increase.
That would be before we made that change. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can, yeah, good,
That was a,
Yeah,
good catch.
a great thing that
Yeah.
everybody agreed to do, and I think we should get that updated, especially if we're using the same document in other places and
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
and start times are probably different as
Yeah,
well.
good catch.
Yeah.
If it's in there.
So.
Right.
Good,
thanks,
good.
everyone.
Thank you. I don't know.
I don't know. All right. Yeah, we need to clap.
Sorry.
That was, that's all clap. We'll
Mixing it up,
clap
Bring the house down.
No pressure.
So just, I'll give the introduction just for the record, for the minutes here, Title IX regulations update, Director of Student Services, Lynn Snow, will give an update on Title IX regulations.
Sure, because they have changed. I will be concise in the interest of time, and because we will be adopting a new policy, there will certainly be time at a subsequent meeting to ask lots of questions and go in deeper. But just to give a broad overview, on April 19th, 2024, the United States Department of Ed did issue final regulations for Title IX, and the new regulations went into effect on August 1st. So the final regulations continue to list specific elements that have to be included in any policy, such as range of disciplinary actions, the standards of evidence and procedures. So one of the largest changes under the new regulations is what's covered under the Title IX grievance procedures. The prior regulations only applied to allegations of sexual harassment. The new regulations apply to any allegations of sexual discrimination. And so this includes discrimination based on sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, pregnancy or related conditions, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Under the prior regulations, school districts did not have to respond to allegations of off-campus sexual harassment that could create a hostile environment in school. But under the new regulation, school districts must respond to allegations of sex-based hostile environment in its education program or activity in the United States, even when some conduct alleged to be contributing to the hostile environment occurred outside of the recipient's education program or activity or outside of the United States. So in addition, previously for conduct to constitute sexual harassment had to be severe, pervasive, and objectionably offensive. Under the new regulations, sex-based harassment is conduct that is either sufficiently severe, pervasive, and school districts need to consider both subjective and objective factors. Finally, school districts must now address complaints for which they have knowledge rather than just actual knowledge. So this changes in language brings in constructive knowledge. So any allegations that the school district should have known about. So additionally, any employee at an elementary school or secondary school is obligated to notify the Title IX coordinator of allegations of sex discrimination. With regard to training, schools have to provide training on an annual basis to employees on when the employees must notify the Title IX coordinator about conduct that reasonably may constitute sex discrimination, how students can seek assistance or make a complaint of sex discrimination, requiring the district to initiate its grievance procedures. Also on an annual basis, all investigators, decision makers, and other persons who are responsible for implementing the district's grievance procedure or have the authority to modify or terminate supportive measures must be trained on the district's requirements under Title IX, the district's grievance procedures, how to serve impartially, the meaning and application of the term relevant, and the Title IX coordinators must have training on their responsibilities and their record-keeping responsibilities. The entire administrative team did go through that comprehensive training earlier this month. So the Title IX coordinator, if a school district has more than one Title IX coordinator, it has to designate one of its Title IX coordinators to retain ultimate oversight over those responsibilities and ensure the district's consistent compliance with Title IX. A school district may now, as appropriate, modify or terminate supportive measures at the conclusion of the grievance procedures or at the conclusion of the informal resolution process. or the district may continue with them beyond that point. If the district decides to modify or terminate the supportive measures, we must allow the complainant or the respondent time to timely seek from an appropriate and impartial employee modification or reversal of the district's decision to provide, deny, modify, or terminate those supportive measures that are applicable. Under the prior regulations, school districts could only engage in informal resolution if there was a formal complaint. This is another change. Now, school districts can engage in formal resolution if there has been a complaint or has information about conduct that may reasonably constitute sex discrimination. Before the district can engage in informal resolution, it has to provide the parties information in writing about the process. So as before, school districts must only investigate formal complaints of sex-based discrimination. A formal complaint no longer has to be in writing. An oral complaint can be received indicating the complainant wants an investigation is sufficient. Under the current regulations, a Title IX coordinator could override a decision of the complaint. Under the previous regulations, a Title IX coordinator could override the decision of a complainant not to file a Title IX complaint if it was deliberately indifferent not to do so. But now, in the absence of a complaint and in the absence or termination of an informal resolution process, the Title IX coordinator may initiate a complaint only if the conduct presents an imminent, serious threat to someone's health or safety or prevents the recipient from ensuring equal access based on sex to its education program or activity. So if the Title IX coordinator initiates a complaint, the Title IX coordinator must notify the complainant prior to doing so and appropriately address reasonable concerns about the complainant's safety or the safety of others. The regulations continue to require written notice upon receipt of a formal complaint. The new regulations still require an investigation to occur upon the receipt of a formal complaint, but 2 reports are no longer required. Instead, the new regulations allow for a single investigator and decision maker. So previously it was an investigatory report and a letter of outcome, and now those have been combined into one. And so finally, under the new regulations, if a complainant or respondent is a student with a disability, the Title IX coordinator must consult with 1 or more members as appropriate of the student's individualized education program team to determine the appropriate supportive measures and how to comply with the requirements of IDEA and Section 504 throughout the implementation of the grievance procedures. With regard to appeal, we now must offer an appeal process that at a minimum is the same as the district offers in all other comparable proceedings. And then the new regulations continue to prohibit retaliation, but now they define retaliation. Would you like me to give you the definition of retaliation?
Sure.
Okay. So it's defined as intimidation, threats, coercion, or discrimination against any person by the district, a student, or an employee, or other person authorized by the district to provide aid, benefit, or service under the district's education program or activity for the purpose of interfering with any right or privilege secured by Title IX or the regulations, or because the person has reported possible sex discrimination, made a sex discrimination complaint, or participated or refused to participate in any way in a recipient's Title IX process. With regard to pregnancy, this is an additional change. When a student or a student's parent or other legal representative informs the district of a student's pregnancy or related conditions, the district must provide that person with the Title IX coordinator's contact information and inform that person that the Title IX coordinator can coordinate specific actions to prevent sex discrimination and ensure that the student's equal access to the educational program or activity exists. So that's the very quick overview of the changes to Title IX from 2020 to 2024. Maybe that they might change again.
Questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Lynn has, the SNO has incredible organizational skills. I was unable to attend the training and I said, well, don't postpone it for me, do the training. So I'm in my office the next day and midday when it shows up at my door. Says, no worries, we've scheduled a 2-hour update for you and the 2 other administrators that couldn't make it. I felt like I was getting a summons.
Nobody gets out of mandated trainings.
No.
And we have mandated safe school training every year. It's 4 hours. instruments. The week before it was due, all staff have to do it, it's just mandated by law. I had a list on my desk with the people who had completed it and who hadn't completed it. So, incredible organizational skills. And I promise I will be at that 2-hour answer.
Oh, you will be.
Thanks, Ms. Stone.
Thank you for this day.
First one to land is
Right? It was the concise manner which it was given. All right, if there is no other new business or presentations before the school committee, we'll move on to our second opportunity for interested citizens. We'll close that portion of the meeting. We'll move through our subcommittee reports, or any other reports that perhaps might not be listed. If you feel like you need to add anything, go right through, but I'll call them in order. So PMBC.
Just go right into the school committee stuff, our school.
Yeah, you want to just talk about Shaker Lane as it relates to PMBC?
Yeah,
Go right
yeah.
ahead.
So probably most important things is we have 2 meetings coming up in October 16th and the 23rd. We'll be here at the police station, open to the community to come. We'll be presenting kind of the current design options that we have, fielding any questions. We have our designers and architects here. So those are really important meetings to come to if you want to specifically come in for a little bit more information before we present this at our town meeting at the end of the month as well. So still making a lot of progress. We sat through a wonderful meeting today with our designers, looked through the 3 different design options. We're starting to hone in into more detail. A lot of work is being done with that. So hopefully we'll be getting some cost estimates soon to get a little bit closer to those understanding of what the cost will be to the town. But yeah, so 16th to 23rd, 7 p.m. Wilson Police Station.
Great. Budget subcommittee's next. Budget subcommittee has our next official meeting on the books for. Somebody help me with that. Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, that's right.
November 13th. It's gonna be a morning meeting, 8:15. So while budget subcommittee hasn't had an official meeting yet, we've got our first one established for the 13th. The school department has prepared a cursory review of last year's budget and has begun thinking about any changes that might be proposed as it relates to school committee approval. They'll be checking in with administrators in the near future to talk about the wants and needs and desires of the 4 schools that we have. And we'll cover some of that information at our first meeting. When I went through the financial policies working group summer sessions, one of my big takeaways was just an emphasis on capital projects and how capital projects get funded and how the town is trying to make a shift away from borrowings for capital projects and moving towards more of a traditional accumulate some savings through free cash and pay for those. So I think, and at least in my experience anyways, on the budget subcommittee and the school committee member, we've put a lot of focus on the operational budget, which is critically important. But at the same time, we need to perhaps put a little bit more focus on the capital needs of our buildings and all of our stuff so that we don't end up in a situation where we're looking at complete replacements. We got to take care of what we have. And I know that we do that in the budget with things like curriculum and technology and all that good stuff, but this is more like carpets and ceiling tiles and HVAC units and all that stuff. And it's not to say we haven't done a bad job, but we're just going to need to start advocating for this stuff as intensely as some of the other departments do. So November 13th, 8:15, Kelly's office, we posted a public meeting. Probably just be 4 of us there, but all are welcome to come. Policy subcommittee?
We do not have an update, but we will have a meeting before our next meeting, because I will reply to Dorothy and have that scheduled.
Great. Policy subcommittee sounds like they're getting ready to kick off some good stuff. We've covered the Shaker Lane Building Committee update. Again, those meetings are October 16th, October 23rd, taking place at 7 p.m. They're right here at the police station. For anyone out there that's interested in gathering information or giving feedback very early in the process, They're great meetings to be at. The earlier you can get involved, the better.
And I can also note too, that those are hybrid as well, so if you can't make it to
Yes.
the police station, we Zoom. So.
And I've written a concise note for the school newsletters about our progress with the Shaker Lane Building Committee, and we'll also have a link to our website and a link to the postcards so that the community can submit any questions that they have. They'll be read and responded to.
Okay, great. CPAC have an update this evening?
Yep, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went-
Like you were here, Elaine.
I apologize. It's really funny watching you all look around when I speak, like, where should we look? Where is she coming from? Anyway, I went to the CPAC meeting on October 1st, and I'm really delighted to report that this group is really gaining traction and momentum and energy. It's just such a pleasure watching. It last year was a kind of a rebuilding year, and this year it's really taking off. So this is a group whose purpose is to form a community with parents of special needs students and support them with the journey that they're on. So at this meeting on October 1st, there were 11 participants outside of the presenters, which was a really nice sized group. It was, large enough to have some really interesting insights, but small enough that people felt very comfortable talking to each other. So Lynn Snow provided an update on the resources the district provides to teachers and families in implementing the new IEP. She also talked about some resources, some extraordinary resources that the district has for supporting students. And to me, some of the highlights were that there are 9 IEP navigators that coach staff and families during the IEP process, which I think is really critical on the ground support with what can be some confusing changes. The district is consulting with some psychologists. They consult with staff on how to best support students. Got some very exciting news that Russell Street received a $40,000 grant to create a therapeutic space. And as you already heard earlier tonight, Park and Rec initiated discussions about adaptive sports. So for those who are listening, if you've got a student with an IEP, I highly recommend coming to the CPAC meetings. It's a very supportive, collaborative community, and the meeting ran long on October 1st because there were so many rich discussions going on between the parents. So highly recommend. The next meeting is November 12th, and it's going to be on basic rights, understanding the IEP. That meeting's going to be virtual, so I'm sure it'll be posted with the Zoom link at some date soon. And that's it for me.
Great. Thank you for the update. Any other subcommittees to report on?
Just would like to give Dorothy Malone a shout out. I mean, Dorothy's at every school committee meeting with us, helping LCTV and helping us maintain a hybrid model. And she has very long days as well. Just really appreciate everything that you do, Dorothy. We're so lucky to have. So thank you.
Well said, well deserved. All right, that concludes this evening's agenda. There's nothing else before us. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Motion made by Stacy, seconded by Bino. Needs to be a roll call vote since we've got Elaine.
Elaine, I.
Perfect. Stacy,
Stacy, yes.
Bino,
Yeah.
Janine,
Janine, yes.
Justin McCarthy votes yes as well. 8:49, we have adjourned.